at least the early part of this year. So all members will have the first opportunity to get tickets to Bombers homes games, with reserved seat members given priority access. So if you want to get to games and bring along your family and friends, make sure everyone dons the sash in 2021 and signs up for membership.
Zach Williams putting his head over the footy. He nearly got himself in trouble at an intra-club game a couple of weeks ago, Zach Williams, when he just bounced off Paddy Dow, who stood up really well in a tackle. And you could just... I put something on my Twitter about the impact of that hit, but you could see his jaw almost fly back. He was off the ground, got a concussion test.
We heard it.
Had about 10 minutes. Yeah, it made that real slapping sound, but had about 10 minutes with the trainers as well. So it just goes to show he's not afraid to put his head over the footy, even though he is light of frame. He's actually probably bigger than what you might expect from an upper body perspective as he rumbles into another contest there, but he's tackled by Essendon's captain, Dyson Heppel. He's got a big frame and he can win the contested ball as well as use his speed on the outside, can't he?
It's a small sample period of him playing as an inside midfielder, isn't it? We know him best as a dashing half-back, but it's obviously enough to have suggested to the Blues that this guy is part of our future in the midfield, and is a different dynamic part of that group as well. I think everyone looks at what the Carlton Footy Club's built over the past couple of years and really impressed with the players who've been brought in. And there was... Obviously, they pulled the trigger on the free agency and trade market last year on the back of Jack Martin the previous season. So they're in a strong position. They'll be looking to break that Carlton finals drought. Last time was 2013 when they obviously replaced the Bombers in that final series. So it will be one to watch how they go this year, given the experience they've brought in. Cripps'
kick just over the head of Mackay, but Dyson Heppel tripped at a pretty inopportune moment and he's run down by one of our personal favourites in the commentary box, Zach Fisher. It was a nice tackle from the young man who's playing forward this year, and everything you hear out of Carlton is that he's just lighting it up at the moment as a small forward.
Yeah, and we saw that last year in the second half of the season, didn't we? And it's his skills, it's his tenacity, as we saw there with the tackle. And he dobbed this one pretty comfortably, as he would expect it to be doing from that part of the ground. But look, he's going to play as a permanent full small forward, isn't he? So that's a new position for him in some respects. He's spent the past couple of summers playing as a midfielder and training up in that part of the ground, but this season has been purely as a small forward. He's got the craft with his kicking, and having watched him train as well, he can do some pretty uncanny things from different parts of inside 50, and he's sharp with his ball disposal. So he kicked 4 goals in that first game back last year against West Coast. And obviously missed a fair proportion of the season too, having suffered a syndesmosis injury in round 1 last year against the Tigers. So spent a fair bit of his shutdown period getting over that. But yeah, he's got the ability to break a game open, and looking forward to seeing him play as a permanent small forward at the feet of Harry Mackay throughout this year.
Dyson Heppel was a man that was run down there. We did speak about him a bit in the first half, but what's his biggest asset across half-back is Paddy Dow grabs the ball, a couple of nice side steps, and just a fend off on Zach Merritt. That's what we were talking about with Paddy Dow being able to use that explosive breakaway speed. Getting back to Dyson Heppel, what's his biggest asset across half-back? Is his composure, his kicking abilities?
It's probably the composure and calm head. I know in that moment it wasn't there, and he did sort of fall over himself with a few options not becoming available to him, but it would be that part of it. And look, he's coming back to grips with that role as well, isn't he? It's I know I mentioned before, it's been a decade since he played in that position, really. So he'll be given some time to ease into it, but there certainly will be some new positions across the board at AFL level this year. And we saw Mark Murphy with the handball there. He's been spending a bit more time forward, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think that's where we'll see Mark Murphy for the majority of the campaign. That's a lovely kick to Mark Pitney as well. Just that spearing ball. He's probably Carlton's best user on the run in space, Mark Murphy. His ability to lower the eyes and find leading targets. So I think that's what Carlton wants, is that high forward option. And this is important for the Blues, that a ruck option can go forward and hit the scoreboard, because I think it was what everyone was really excited about when Matthew Cruiser first broke onto the scene in about 2007, but they haven't had too many goals from ruck recently, as Mark Pitney puts that through and extends Carlton's lead to 14 points, the biggest advantage of the afternoon. So that's really important, that a ruckman can go forward, and especially when you've got guys like Curnow and McGovern and DeConing and Casbolt, who are out injured at the moment, to have that secondary option that can go forward and hit the scoreboard.
He hasn't actually kicked a goal at AFL level yet. So I'd be hoping from his perspective, and I'm sure he would be, he'd be playing on his mind. He might even count that one. He might be getting desperate to put one through. But look, 20 games at AFL level so far, obviously came across from the Hawks. I thought he was really good last year.
Yep.
13 games and made that number one spot his own. And to be honest, there wasn't a huge rush to get back Cruiser at that later point of the year, was there? As he was battling those injuries because, you know, Pitno was holding on to that mantle really well. So, yeah, as you say, push forward in that instance, and some good work by Mark Murphy too to square it up to him.
Some exciting signs there for Carlton as Draper puts it down Darcy Parrish's throat, and they go forward, and it's a free kick to the Blues. I think it was Harry Jones who might have just had a bit of a push out behind the contest, unless they gave it to Peter Wright, against Peter Wright for shepherding.
Nice clearance though from Parrish out of the middle, and again, I think when he's in there, a couple of years ago, the numbers suggested that when he was playing as a inside the square midfielder, Essendon's clearances were as best as they got out of the centre. So that has been, I guess, a challenge for the Bombers over a couple of years to work out their best inside the centre square group, whether it's Shield or Merritt, where McGrath fits in. You know, these three players are all, if you do McGrath, Parrish and Merritt, they're three of the smaller sort of midfield types. So Kyle Langford in there too to complement what they bring in. Caldwell's a bit in between, but has real strength and power. And yeah, I think they're building a wider net of midfielders to be able to compete with some of the better sides now.
Here is Caldwell and Parrish linking up for the Bombers around the corner kick, which Sam Doherty will chop off quite nicely.
We haven't spoken much about him. He's obviously had a challenging off-season, but it's good to see him out there.
Yeah, he's fully recovered from the ankle surgery that he underwent earlier in the summer, which is good to see. And a really strong year last year of halfback, coming back from successive ACL injuries, which kept him out of the game for 2 straight years. So he slots into that position perfectly. He's the ultimate professional, Sam Doherty, the co-captain. Sam Walsh delivers the Blues inside 50. Mackay just can't mark, and the ball will be taken.
You mentioned ultimate professionals lucky enough to spend a week embedded with the Blues last year in the hub up in Queensland, and something that did take my eye was Sam Doherty's leadership ability and his ability to get around to all parts of the group and club, and his messaging. He spent a lot of time on his craft. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he goes down the coaching path in the future.
Did a bit of coaching work when he was actually sidelined for those 2 years. He was the Carlton's bench man. So Brendan Bolton and David Teague were both in charge across those 2 years. He acted as the liaison from the coaching box down to the players on the bench. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he's got a role in a coach's box waiting for him after his playing days conclude. The interesting thing with Sam Doherty is before that season where he first got injured, which was 2017, where he won All-Australian honours, the last 4 or 5 games of that year, he actually spent playing predominantly through the midfield and attended a lot of centre bounces in that time. I think it was a role that Carlton was grooming him for. So whether or not he still has the aerobic capacity to do that, as Murphy handballs to Fisher, who gets the ball across to Cunningham, and he walks it through for a goal. So the Blues have got 3 on the trot to start this second quarter, and they extend their lead to 20 points. But yeah, just whether or not Sam Doherty has that ability to go through the midfield again is probably just something to keep an eye on this year, because he obviously stepped back into life pretty comfortably across halfback again last year, but we'll see what the future holds for him.
The Blues have got on top of the Bombers here. The Bombers struggling to get it out of their back half at the moment with quite as much ease as they probably did in the first quarter. So we've seen some smaller types get involved for the Blues. We've seen Fisher a couple of times now with the goal assist. Mark Murphy involved there as well. So Bombers will need to tighten down on those guys to keep in touching distance. We know obviously it's the first hit out, so the result isn't the big main game of this contest, but obviously they'll be wanting to keep in touch and work on, I guess, what was put out there in that first term, because there were some really exciting signs at that point. David
Cunningham's going to be an interesting prospect this year. Probably played his best game of his career against Essendon in round 3 last year in that slender win for the Blues as a midfielder, but he's another one that David Teague's mentioned this summer. We'll be doing a bit of both in 2021, playing both through the midfield and as that high half forward as well, as Merritt looks to spread from the stoppage. Dylan Shield with a pretty sharp haircut. Handballs across to Parrish, who's got plenty of footy this quarter and just steadies it up to Ham.
We saw
about 51.
Clearly a lot of Essendon's hopes will be shouldered by those 3 players in the midfield there. It's Merritt, over to Shield, over to Parrish. Zach Merritt's a star, and I think he's probably Essendon's best player. He's so consistent. He's missed 10 games since debuting in 2013. He's a really durable option and someone who can break a game open, and that's a really good kick from Braden Ham.
Just creeps over the line, so the Bombers finally get their first of the second term, reducing the margin back to 14 points. But that's a lovely kick from Braden Ham, one that we spoke about before, whether or not he can have a bit of a run on ball this year and sort of use that outside run and drift forward an occasion where he managed to kick that goal.
He's a link-up player for mine, and a really good one when he's got the ball in his hands. The left footer that we saw just there, and a penetrating kick. He played 10 games last year, which was double his take of 5 the previous season in his debut year. So another player who I think will be sensing an opportunity to fill a spot. You know, there's a wing roll up for grabs, there's a half-forward roll up for grabs, and he's been busy today. So added a little bit more size to his frame, which is also a good sign.
So we've seen Cal Moore go through the ruck, and now here's Oscar McDonald for his first run of the day for the Blues, one of their train-on players looking to nab that final spot on Carlton's list via the pre-season supplemental selection period. So he's in the ruck. He's played a fair bit of footy for Melbourne across the years, but probably not much footy in the ruck, mostly down back. Had a really good season in that year that Melbourne made the preliminary final in 2018 as Liam Jones steps across and takes a really strong mark.
Couple of old warriors there in front of each other, aren't there? Jones and Hooker battling it out in that spot. We see Hooker playing forward. It's the age-old question, isn't it? The chicken or the egg?
How many times do you reckon you've had this debate, Cal?
Which end of the ground will Cale Hooker play at? He's another player, obviously, in the latter stages of his career, but it might depend on what comes through.
Oh, as Fish hits the post. But it's a free kick.
Being awarded a push in the back. It might come down to what actually happens at either end in terms of the younger players and the younger key position players as well. So Fisher feigning to pass this, but I think he probably wants to go for the shot. And you'd expect he finishes this one well.
It's an interesting kick for a left footer, though. And he's going to use his right, as I say that. And he's going to hit the post again. So he hit the post when he was pushed, and then he rolls around the right foot from the free kick and hits the post again.
That's a spot where, because of the redevelopment at the Carlton Footy Club going on at the moment, which viewers might be able to catch in different parts of the broadcast, the players have actually had to relocate their rooms over this summer, and around that area is where they actually basically leave the track. So they spend a lot of time kicking at goal from that spot, so you'd be a little bit disappointed to be missing that one from there.
Jack Silvani with another strong contest out in front of Jordan Ridley, who's got that match up today, although it looks like James Stewart might just be taking him from this contest as well. So where does Ridley go in 2021? Best and fairest winner last year at such a young age. How good can he be among the good intercept players in the competition?
I think last year he put himself right amongst that top group, and another year like last year probably propels him into the All-Australian team. Yep. It's a hard act to follow, but he's an exceptional talent, which we saw last year, and that's a huge fly.
Big fly.
From
was
James Stewart.
Stewart, was it?
Yeah, that was James Stewart. But yeah, Jordan Ridley, still only 22 years old. He'd won a best and fairest after playing 26 games throughout his career. Last year was the first real run at it in terms of coming in with good preparation. It's been a little bit interrupted this time around, though. He missed a few weeks with a calf injury across the pre-season, but obviously timed his run well enough to be ready to go for today's clash with the Blues.
Patrick Cripps taking that right contest for the Blues. Anthony McDonald-Tipungwuti trying to get out the back and does.
Very clever.
It's a lovely tap on because Essendon have got numbers forward, and he continues his run. If they can just get the ball out the back to him, which they can't. Although Adam Sard's given him another opportunity. And here is Devon Smith, nice little side step. And Harry Jones will look to take that, but can't.
He missed the shot there, Dev Smith, but I think the agile feet and the quick movement there is a really good sign for the Bombers. We've seen that a couple of times today as well, and he just looks...
Just didn't have that last year, did he?
No, that was missing in parts of his game for sure, and he got used across half-back late in the season. I still think his best spot is as a half-forward / midfield option and a tackling beast, which we know he can be. He's one of the competition's best at that, so I think there's been some promising signs from him today.
Fisher out in front of Dyson Heppel, using those quick feed as he gets the ball forward. Harry Mackay's flown it a couple today but hasn't marked. Can't mark that one either. Ball's fed out to Ed Curnow, who has Oscar McDonald on and uses him. Playing in the ruck today, Oscar McDonald, as he aims to nab that final list spot on Carlton's group. That's a very strong mark from Patrick Cripps. It's not paid though. Ball might have just hit the deck as Peter Wright dived in front of him.
A double whack here for Patrick Cripps.
Then get pinged for holding the footy.
Thought he probably held that long enough to be paid a mark. Maybe the umpire was obscured looking at that one inside the 50.
Peter Wright's a big man. Might have got his big frame in the way of the umpire's line of sight then.
The interesting thing about Patrick Cripps in that marking attempt is that we know he's spent a lot of this summer trying to build up his body, hasn't he?
Yes.
He's gone the other way in terms of his fitness program over this pre-season. Do you want to explain how they've rolled that one out?
Yeah, he's sort of obviously had a few injury issues last year with his knee and looked hobbled. He also had a shoulder injury, but he's gone back home to WA and done a lot of work, just being the best he can be. He said he was trying to improve in too many areas, but he just wanted to make sure he knew what he was good at and go back to what he was good at and what made him such a great player across 2018 and 2019 and what saw him win 3 best and fairest for the club as Paddy Dow gets run down there. It's a really good tackle from Matt Guelphy, who's probably been Essendon's best, you'd have to say, so far.
He'd be right up there, absolutely, and continued his form from the first quarter.
Keep going forward now. They just can't seem to... The Bombers had that movement from their back half really down pat in that first quarter. Just can't seem to get it going. Can't seem to find that link-up kick at around this spot in the ground. High half forward wing roll, can they?
A lot has been spoken from Ben Rutten across the pre-season around cohesion and getting to know teammates and getting to know the culture of the footy club. He's spent a lot of time and energy teaching the players about the club's history, the newcomers about the eras of success at the club, even down to the little things, and the imagery around the footy club has been a big focus for him as well. So building that cohesion takes time, and this is his first real season at the helm. We know that last year as the senior assistant coach, the succession plan was well and truly underway by now, that he was having a lot to do with the game plan and how the Bombers wanted to play. But until you're actually in the hot seat, you're not in the hot seat. And this year, I think, is the first year of his real development in that role and in that position. And this player, Kyle Langford, will be a big part of that. And he has driven a lot around the culture, and I think internally he's viewed as a real leader on the rise. He didn't make the 4-man leadership group, which I was a little bit surprised about. I thought if it stretched out, he probably would have been pretty close to being within that. But I know that at the end of last year, he was pretty strong on how he viewed the future of this footy club and what they want to do next. So certainly he will be a player that the Bombers will be hoping to go forward on what he produced last year, because he was voted 4th in the best and fairest last year too. So that was his breakout campaign.
Nice little exciting passage leading to that shot on goal with Nick Hind, who was so pivotal to everything Essendon did in that first quarter. As the Blues, Adam Sarder's not allowed to run on then.
Just shows the man on the mark rule there in action, because Sard was able to get away, and in previous years Braden Ham would have been able to corral him a certain way or a certain point of where he wanted him to kick to, but Sard, with that takeaway speed, was able to get away, and not being able to actually move beyond that spot allowed Sard to get away and get to the kick that he wanted to hit. So that's a really encouraging sign for the Blues on how they can take the best out of that rule and really advantage them. Yeah, and also great signs on the boundary line here at Icon Park, as Michael Hurley has re-engaged with the players at Essendon. They've spoken a lot about having not seen him for a couple of years, and a couple of weeks. He's been battling that hip infection, and he's just walking amongst the ground here, so getting some hugs from the players.
Yeah, everyone from the bench just went up and swarmed Michael Hurley then, which was really nice to see. He's making his way very slowly on crutches across the boundary line as Anthony McDonald, Tip and Rudy adds a second straight for Essendon to reduce the margin to 7 points. But yeah, that was really nice to see, wasn't it? When he emerged from the rooms, all the players coming over to say hello to their old teammate who's been such an important figure for them for such a long time.
And a much loved figure too. He's a player who doesn't have to say a lot to be one of the most caring players at the footy club, and often people at Essendon speak about the love and empathy he has for his teammates. So good emotion there amongst the playing group
there
going over.
You can see all the players there just going over to say hello to their old teammate as he makes his way to the bench. Big smiles from him as well, because it sounds like a nasty injury, that infection, and it seems like he's had a rough deal over the last couple of weeks. So it's good to see him back out there and seeing his teammates again.
It was a nice finish from Anthony McDonald-Tipungwuti, by the way.
Very nice. And he's got out the back a couple of times and looked quite dangerous as Will Setterfield gets that clearance kick. Spending a bit of time in the back half today, Will Setterfield as well. Spent a lot of time on the wing and pushing across half back to act as that intercept play, which he nearly does there. Adam Sard's getting on the footy a lot more in this quarter as well. Cunningham drives forward for the Blues. Can't get the ball out the back where Fisher was waiting for it. This is Jack Martin on the far side of the ground now for Carlton. They're just using the ball slowly up the wing. Zach Fisher looking for the entry kick inside 50, but can't find a man. Essendon starting to get a run on again in this game. They were out to a 20-point deficit, but the last 2 goals of the match has made it a lot closer than what it potentially could have been. Archie Perkins, he's got a nice sidestep, doesn't he? Saw that in the first quarter. Geez, he sidestepped no one there as well. He's using it every chance he gets.
It's funny for someone like Archie, who there's a good mark there by Cale Hooker after the Perkins pass. Someone like Archie Perkins, this is his first game of footy in 12 months. I remember watching his last one. It was down at Seaford. It was a Sandringham Dragons intra-club match, and he sidestepped a few that day too, Rolly. He was best on ground, and he didn't play again. And that's where prospects in Victoria will enter their AFL careers in very different spots to what South Australian and WA talents and prospects from New South Wales and Queensland may, because they have spent significant time without a game of footy. So Hooker misses that kick. It was from a tough angle, but I think the signs from Perkins just flashes. And you only look for snippets, and that's the exciting things about these games. You only need to look for snippets from first-time players and first-game players, and we see the Perkins sidestep. He gets it back here, and Cox and him waxing with the ball, and then he passed it into Hooker, who took the strong grab. I think that's a really good sign for the Bombers that he's coming to grips with the tempo of the game. Yeah,
you're not in these games. You're not looking for guys like Archie Perkins to have 30 touches. I mean, it's nice if they do, and the bloke who just dished that off, Sam Walsh, I remember one of his first practice games after going pick 1 was against Hawthorn here, and he did have about 30 touches, but you're not really looking for that. You're looking for the glimpses, the moments that are going to make them long-term players for a football club. And I think Essendon fans, even though we're only a half through this game, would have seen that already from Archie Perkins, and even Nick Cox, who's had a couple of nice moments drifting forward as well. As Jack Nunes gets across to chop that one off. It's turned a little bit sloppy, and that kick probably is evidence of that, as Dev Smith finishes. No, he doesn't on the run.
Fades a little bit.
Of side. But yeah, I mean, that kick from Jack Nunes is probably evidence the game's turned a bit sloppy in this quarter. I mean, it's as you mentioned, the first hit out against opposition other than themselves for such a long time. You'd expect a bit of rustiness as Tom Williamson drives forward, but
bit of sliding doors about a few players on either side here as well, Riley. Devon Smith, Dylan Shield, players who...
Will
Setterfield as well. The first two, the Blues were interested in and chased hard through their years and departing the Giants. And obviously the Bombers chased Will Setterfield pretty hard too before he decided on the Blues. So Bombers supporter growing up, Will. Loved Matty Lloyd and James Hird, but chose the Navy Blues when that option arose.
Long kick inside 50. It's just fisted through from, I think that was Lockie Plowman. And the margin is back to 4 points. Pretty evenly poised as Devon Smith runs down Jack Nunes really nicely. That's got to give Essendon fans a lot of excitement for the season ahead, seeing Devon Smith really getting that closing speed and that physicality that was such a big part of his game when he was among the best Essendon players a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was his first year as a recruit, and there were some worries about his knee at that point, but he put them to the side to piece together a fantastic season. I think he's been really strong today, and as you mentioned, the little things, the zip, the zag, all that type of action from Smith has been really encouraging.
Margin back to 3 points here at Icon Park. Adam Saad dragging that one through. And that is half-time with the Blues 3 points up. They kick the first 3 goals of that first quarter, of that second quarter, sorry. But Essendon quickly back into the game. So it's 6-4, 42, 5-7, 37, a 3-point lead for the Blues. Still plenty to come here at Icon Park. Michael Gibbons having a kick to himself down there in the boundary. He'll be one of the players that will see the second half along with Liam Stockart and Lockie O'Brien for Carlton. But plenty of things to get both sides excited about in that term and in that half.